here today with David B. Horne, who is a right-brained creative accountant. He spent the first half of his career with big corporates, training as a chartered accountant with PwC, then holding senior finance roles with AT&T and the BBC. In 1999, he moved to the entrepreneurial world, beginning a 10-year stint of being CFO with some very fast-growing companies, raising over £100 million, buying or selling more than 20 businesses, and setting up his own wine business along the way. Today, he works with founders, helping them raise money and invest in their businesses, achieving exponential growth rates. And he's the author of Add, Then Multiply, How Small Businesses Can Think Like Big Businesses. There it is, look, if you're looking at this on YouTube, and achieve exponential growth, which won the Business Self-Development Book of the Year at the Business Book Awards in 2020. So first of all, welcome, David. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Alison. It's a pleasure to be
Great
here.
to have you. And secondly, congratulations. I mean, I know it was a little while ago now,
Thank you.
but congratulations on winning in the COVID year.
Yes,
Did you celebrate on your
yes,
own?
we did. Yeah, yeah. My wife and I sat at home. I had my DJ on, and when we watched it online and saw that I won, I cracked open a bottle of champagne and we drank that.
I
So.
mean, it may not be quite the same, but at least you don't have to pay for the taxi home. So, there are the swings and roundabouts. And so I know that you obviously have been an entrant to the Business Book Awards. You have been a shortlisted author in the Business Book Awards. You've been a winner in the Business Book Awards, and you are now a judge at the Business Book Awards. So tell us what that multidimensional perspective feels like.
Well, it's been fascinating to, whenever you get an opportunity to see something from multiple sides, it gives you a much greater degree of understanding and knowledge of what goes into it. And having been a judge now, I mean, the rigor with which the judging is applied is really quite something. I mean, I always knew it was going to be serious, but I mean, we had the short listing where we had a bunch of books that we whittled down to a list of, I think, 8, and then we had 8 weeks to read them all, and then literally yesterday I had the call with the judges where we decided who our winner was, and I guess I'm not allowed to say anything
Absolutely
more
not
than
allowed
that.
to say anything. No. They'd have to kill us both. No. So we're recording this on the 31st of July. The award ceremony is going to be in September. And so we're in that sort of difficult period of time where you kind of almost don't want to speak to anybody as a judge, do you? In case you sort of inadvertently let something slip. It's really terrifying.
Exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, the Business Book Awards is brilliant for all sorts of reasons, but I think one of the wonderful things about it is that it does provide anybody who's interested in really good business books with a kind of go-to reading list, doesn't it, in all the various
Oh yeah,
categories?
definitely. Absolutely. And it's got such a wide range of categories, so you can just kind of go onto the website and look at the winners page, and this year, last year, if you want to go back to 2020, and you'll find my book on there. And yeah, it's really clearly set out. And I think if anybody had a particular, I wanted to know about sales and marketing, or I wanted to know about diversity, equality, and inclusion, or I wanted to know about whatever category, just go in and look at the books that
Yeah,
won.
and you can't go wrong.
Yeah, definitely.
And I mean, I guess I've got a sort of fairly self-selecting audience here. The people who are listening to us speaking care about business books. So in a sense, we are preaching to the choir here. But just in case somebody
Yeah,
stumbled in and thinking it was a different podcast, tell us why books matter for business, for you particularly, but also just business in general.
sure. Well, I mean, books matter because, I mean, books are a permanent record. I mean, I have a published book that will always be out there, even long after I'm gone. And that's kind of, that's an element of legacy, which is very cool. But more importantly, books are a great way for people to learn. Books are a great way for people to share their knowledge. And I know when I was starting out building my business, it was all around, talking to people about what books they'd read and
Mm.
what were the things that they were learning, and what I remember one time being at a dinner, and there were 6 or 7 of us. We were on a training weekend with a different entrepreneurial group that I'm no longer involved with, but we were out for dinner and just talking about what books had we read and sharing books. And some of the books that I read were, really had a significant impact. You read the book and then you meet the author, and then one thing leads to another, and yeah, it's remarkable. And I still get that today. I mean, I was a guest on a podcast recently, and someone that I've never heard of, uh, downloaded my book, read it, reached out to me, and tomorrow I'm going to pitch with them for a new business opportunity.
It's a
So, you
brilliant
know,
way to get to know people, isn't it? So if you are
yeah,
reading somebody's book, by the end of it, you really know them as a person. Of course, as the author, you have no
absolutely.
idea who they are.
And it settles, if there were ever a credibility and authority piece, it's
Yes.
completely settled.
And it also develops you as the author, doesn't it? Because to get to that point, you have to have really articulated what it is you want to say in a way that maybe you don't in the normal run of business.
Very much so. And for me, I mean, I wrote my first book in 2019, and I had been building up my practice over a period of 7 years, and I had accumulated a wide range of clients, some of whom fit with where I wanted to go and some of whom didn't. And the fact that I had published a book and was able to say, you know, here's my book, this is what I do, all of this is what I don't do, meant that I could go back to clients where I felt a sense of loyalty to them, but they weren't going where I wanted to go. And I was able to sit down and have a conversation with them and say, look, this is where I'm going. This is, you don't need this. What you need is this. I'm happy to help find you the right person for you, and let's part ways amicably and hopefully stay in touch.
That's so funny because we talk a lot about the book as a way of attracting clients, but it's
Yeah,
also a way of consciously uncoupling from the clients that aren't going to be serving
very
you and
much
vice
so.
versa.
Very much so.
How
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And I know that you are on the journey towards a new edition of Add Then Multiply. So,
Yes.
so many questions there. First of all, why? Secondly, how do you know when it's time? Thirdly, how are you going about it? Let's start with those.
Okay. So, why? So my business has, ugh, I won't say my business has taken a pivot. My business has kind of evolved in a way that might not have been what I originally set out to do. And all of the content that's in Add Then Multiply is still valid to what I do, but there's a whole other side of the business that hasn't been set out in the book. So the second edition is going to pick up and cover both aspects of the business. Why else? I had been thinking of writing another book that was just going to be the other aspect of the business, and I just thought, why do I need to write another book? Why not just take this one? It's now 5 years old. By the time the second edition comes out, Add Then Multiply will be 6 years
Mm.
old. I spoke with my publisher about it. We had a long conversation around what the changes would be, etc. And she said, no, it makes more sense to do a second edition, and I'm comfortable with that.
And just so people are, because people might not know what a second edition, if you make a few corrections to a book, it's just a corrected reprint. You know that's not a new edition.
Correct.
A new edition has to have a significant amount of new or updated material in it. But
Correct.
as you say, it's still fundamentally the same purpose, content, target market, idea. It's
Yep.
just updated and perhaps you've added some
Just
stuff in.
updated and if anything, more niched in a way.
Oh, interesting. Tell me what you mean by that.
So, I mean, am I allowed to promote my business?
Well, I'm not going to stop you. Go on.
Okay, wonderful. So Add Then Multiply is all about my FACE methodology, which is scaling up companies through raising capital, buying other companies, putting them together, selling. FACE, fund, acquire, consolidate, exit. The other aspect of my business is working with entrepreneurs, um, and basically providing a finance team for them. So a lot of entrepreneurs that I know, um, don't have very good finance
Yeah.
functions, don't often understand it themselves. And so they end up outsourcing it to an accounting firm or to a bookkeeper or someone. And these aren't people who've really worked inside businesses running finance functions before. I mean, I've worked in, I mean, the last listed company I was with, we had operations in 23 countries around the world. I had finance staff in not all 23 countries, but probably about 18 of them. I know how to build teams, manage teams, run global organizations, deal with fast growth. deal with all the compliance and all of that. And I've always done it as part of the team of the company. But now that I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm not looking to go and work full time for any one person, but I'm looking to provide that as a service to entrepreneurial businesses, because when they scale, oftentimes the accounting firms that they're dealing with struggle
Yeah.
to manage the scaling up. Some of them are okay, but a lot of them, they're just focused on
Yeah.
compliance, not on how do we make the business
Yeah. It's
grow and become
operational
more
rather than
profitable.
strategic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how are you going about this new edition?
Slowly. um, it's been stewing in my brain for probably 3 or 4 months now, and now that I have the clarity that it is going to be a new edition, that stewing is starting to take a bit more shape. Um, and I would imagine that I'll be ready to start writing in the autumn. I've got a couple of big family things coming up. My daughter's getting married in Greece in August, and I want to be fully present for that.
Yeah.
And my wife and I go back to Canada, where we're originally from. Well, I'm originally from. She was born here in the UK, but her family emigrated to Canada when she was small. So, but we have a lot of family back there, and we go back every year I call it the annual pilgrimage.
I love the idea of you sort of sitting at your daughter's wedding, covertly scribbling notes in a. Don't do that. Please don't do
No,
that.
no.
But when you do get to it, after all the travelling and the joyfulness and all what does writing look like for you?
Um, well, if I think back to the previous two books, my first book was literally a brain dump, and then editing and testing and re-editing and then moving forward. And that process took, I guess the writing process took about 3 months, and the editing and repurposing took another 3 months until we had a product that we were happy with. My second book was a huge research project. It took 18 months to research it, which was
Mm.
fascinating, but hard work. Um, the second edition of the first book will be much more a brain dump, but updated, adding the new element of the business, rejigging things a bit, probably taking some bits out that are less relevant now that I'm 5 years down the line.
Mm.
But in terms of that, I will put together a careful plan of what the book has to look like. And then the way I tend to write, and different people have different routes, but the way I tend to write is, when I've got some spare time, I'll just sit down and start writing. And I might struggle to write 100 words in an hour, and I might write 5,000 words in a day. And it's almost a touched by the muse kind of thing. It really depends. Because I've sat literally at my desk and just the words do not come
Yeah,
out.
it's so interesting,
And I've
isn't it?
sat there and the words just flow.
Yeah, and I think a lot has to do with the amount of caffeine in your system. That's my theory. I love that you've done, in a sense, both kinds of books, though, because I think it's quite insightful that there's the kind of book where you know exactly what it is you need to write. You're basically just encoding your methodology. You've worked through it.
Yeah,
You know exactly what it is. You need to just get it on paper, shape it into something that can work when you're not in the room with people, and works well. And
yeah,
that's one kind of writing. And then
yeah,
that second book you're talking about is much more the I've got an interest, I've got an idea, I've got an itch to scratch. I don't actually know what it is that I need to write. So I need to start right upstream with the research. And
yeah,
they both have their place. And they're both
yeah,
really enjoyable in
yeah.
some ways. But was that second one
They
a bit of
are.
a shock to the system?
Yes, it was, and it was really interesting, because I started out writing it similar to the first one, even though I knew that there were bits and pieces I had to go out and research. But then I managed to find the person who I wanted to write the foreword to the book. I managed to get an introduction to them, and we had a call, and she said to me point blank, "You're not thinking big enough. You need to go away and rethink this whole thing, come back to me when you think you're ready. And that just kind of and it probably took me a year before I was ready to go back to her. And I reached out to her and said, okay, this is what I've done. This is the research I've done. I mean, well, here's the book. It's called Funded Female Founders. It's all about the challenges that female entrepreneurs face when raising capital, because it's a very uneven playing
Mm.
field. And I went out and researched a lot of stuff on what was happening around the world. Um, I um, I read Emmeline Pankhurst's autobiography, which was a fantastic piece of literature. And I interviewed probably 2 or 3 dozen female founders about their journeys and what they'd experienced and all of that. And so it was this huge research project, and then collation of the research into a distilled set of findings.
It's brilliant. So, I mean, the book is obviously a business development tool in some ways, but it's also a real personal and professional development project, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah.
So if anybody's listening,
And in
go
fact,
on.
so you mentioned I'm a chartered accountant. I was writing the book counted towards my CPD
Oh,
hours,
nice.
professional development. So yeah,
That's brilliant. Yes, I hadn't even thought. So
yeah.
how do you do that? Because you obviously haven't got formal CPD accreditation.
I have published a book. I am the author of that book. This is how long it took me to write it, and my requirement is to have 35 hours per annum, and I had a lot more than 35 hours of writing, and it was accepted without any questions.
That's such a hot tip. If you're a professional, if you care about your CPD, writing a book can get you there. That's really cool. Who
Absolutely.
knew? Brilliant. So I'm going to ask you for your best tip, David. If somebody's listening, if they are inspired by this, if they want to write a book, or if they're writing a book and they're feeling a bit stuck, what would you tell them?
Sit down with a pen and a piece of paper, or sit down with your laptop open or your desktop open or whatever, and just start writing. It doesn't matter what comes out. Um, I read a number of books about writing when I was writing my first book, and I got stuck. And I read Stephen King's On Writing, and I read Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, and a couple of others. And one of them talked about the shitty first
Mm.
draft. And no one is ever going to see your shitty first draft, but just get it out of your head and onto paper or onto the screen, get it onto whatever medium that has captured it, and then go back and revisit it
Yeah, because
later.
then you've got
But
something to
just
work with.
the secret to writing a book is to start writing.
Yeah. And it's funny, isn't it? Sometimes you sort of people think, oh, well, I don't know what it is I want to say, so there's no point starting writing. But actually it's the process of writing that sort of reveals what it is you want to say.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And then the other key thing, when you've got something that you think is reasonable, um, share it with 1 or 2 close but critical
Yeah.
friends and ask them for honest feedback. Because I did that, and as a result of doing that, I rewrote the entire front end of the first book.
You see, I can imagine somebody listening going, well, that sounds like a really bad idea. I don't want to do that. Why is that a good thing?
This book would not have won with the front end that it had originally.
Yeah. It makes for a better book. It does. It's very,
It makes it a better book.
you're inviting more work for yourself, and it feels, it makes you very vulnerable, doesn't it? Putting your baby out to people who are going to rip it apart. How do you get over that?
It, well, it does. It does. You gotta put on your big boy or big girl underpants and just get out there and do it. The alternative is to go to market with a substandard product, but like I said earlier, once the book is published, it's out there, and it's going to be out there after I'm gone. Do you want to have a good book out there, or do you want to have a shitty book out there?
Yeah, I mean, there's no answer to that. So that's absolutely it. Thank you. And I'm going to ask you to recommend a book as well. You're not allowed to recommend either
Okay.
of yours, as you know.
Apart from my own.
I think we've done that. But what would
Absolutely.
you recommend if somebody
Um,
hasn't read that they should give a try?
a book that is, it's more a book for people who are at an early stage or are thinking about setting up on their own, as opposed to someone who's a really experienced business leader. And the book is called Entrepreneur Revolution by Daniel
Yeah,
Priestman.
it's so good.
It's a book that's had a significant impact on my life in many ways that I couldn't possibly imagine when I first read it.
And he's got, I mean, you and I both have know Daniel Priestley, have heard him talk, and it just it's like listening to the guy, isn't it? He's got a very direct
Yeah,
way of speaking on the page.
yeah,
Did you find that was
yeah, and
inspiring?
he does. No, absolutely, and helpful and great content, and kind of keeps you guessing, um, particularly with that book,
What do you mean by that?
because there's well he talks about a thread that runs through the book
Oh
that's
yes,
that's there, and
I remember. I was baffled by that. I got a bit annoyed about that.
yeah,
Did you work that out?
no, I think it's a
Uh,
marketing gimmick, but it works.
yeah, I remember leaving a review about that book. Actually, I was like, I'm just really annoyed by this secret thread that runs through the book. But yeah, because it makes you feel stupid, and I hate that, which is really smart of him. Brilliant. So, David, if people want to find out more about you, more about your books, where should they go?
Easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn, David B. Horne, B as in Bravo, and Horne with an E at the end. Or they can go to my website, add-then-multiply.com, just like the book. And I'm also on Twitter or X, David_B_Horne. And I'm on Instagram, but I don't use it very much, but my team puts posts out. And that's also, I think, David-B-Horne.
Brilliant. I'll put all those links up on the show notes at extraordinarybusinessbook.com, along with the transcript, and you can hear the conversation there on your podcast platform of choice, or you can see it on YouTube. Actually, I don't know why I'm saying that, because if you're hearing this, you've found a way to look at it. So anyway, if you haven't seen it, though, you might want to have a look at the Extraordinary Business Book Club playlist on YouTube, and then you get the front cover in its full glory. Marvellous. So good to talk to you today, David. I will be seeing you
Thank
in
you.
September for the Business Book Awards.
No, I'll be in Canada that year. Sadly,
Oh,
I won't be able to
shame.
make it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll be seeing our fellow judges at the Business Book Awards in September, and
Indeed.
hopefully see you next shortlisting day.
Yeah, hopefully they'll invite me back next year.
Great to see you. Thanks so much.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Cheerio.